As night fell, the encroaching darkness gradually shrouded the vast mountain range. With the night came the roaring of various demonic beasts, their cries echoing through the mountains, rising and falling in a relentless symphony. Amidst a remote cliff deep in the mountains, a fissure lay hidden behind large boulders. The crack was several meters wide, just enough to fit a dozen or so people. Lin Dong gently placed the girl he carried onto the ground, his gaze cautious as he swept through the fissure. Then, casting a glance at the darkening sky outside, he began to move the large stones, bit by bit covering the gap. Huanhuan sat quietly, leaning against the rock wall. Her pale face gave her a frail appearance. She didn't speak, only watched Lin Dong busily moving back and forth. A trace of complex emotion flickered in her eyes. After a while, she softly said, "I treated you like that before, yet you still risked your life to save me." Lin Dong finished covering the fissure, dusted his hands, and turned to glance at her. Frowning, he asked, "Do I look like someone who holds grudges?" Huanhuan chuckled lightly and then added, "Even though you saved me, I won't take back my last remark about you." "Still arrogant, huh? Seems like you don't have much faith in my ability to comprehend the great wilderness scripture," Lin Dong replied with a smile. "It's not that I doubt you. It's just that the success rate of mastering the great wilderness scripture is incredibly low. Even my sister once meditated for months in front of the great wilderness monument at your wild hall, but she still failed in the end. In the past century, aside from Senior Zhou Tong, no one from our Dao sect has succeeded in comprehending it." Huanhuan shook her head. "Our Dao sect has produced many exceptional talents over the last 100 years, but none of them have managed to conquer the great wilderness scripture," she said, her voice tinged with regret. Lin Dong nodded silently, fully aware that if the great wilderness scripture were that easy to grasp, the wild hall wouldn't be ranked the weakest among the 4 halls. The power of the great wilderness scripture is undeniable. If you truly manage to comprehend it, it would greatly benefit our Dao sect. At the very least, during the next sect competition, we would have more of a safeguard. Huanhuan ran her slender fingers through her hair as she spoke. "The sect competition. What exactly is that?" Lin Dong asked, his interest piqued. He had heard the term from Lu Tong of the Yuan sect on 100 Dynasties Mountain, but didn't know the specifics. Every so often, the super sects of the Eastern Mystery region host the Grand Sect competition. Only disciples from these sects are allowed to participate, and in many ways, it's a form of trial. As Huanhuan lowered her gaze, Lin Dong noticed her hands clenching slightly. Each time, our Dao sect loses some of its most promising disciples because of that competition. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. Was the sect competition just like the 100 Dynasty War? Disciples are lost both because of the dangers of the competition location and because of the conflicts between sections. However, for our Dao sect, most of the losses are due to the Yuan sect. Her voice turned colder, echoing through the fissure, and Lin Dong could sense a hint of anger in her tone. "The Yuan sect?" Lin Dong frowned. "Our Dao sect has always had a poor relationship with the Yuan sect. Their arrogance and the events surrounding Senior Zhou Tong have only worsened things. The disciples of both sects view each other as bitter enemies. Normally, the higher-ups try to suppress the animosity, but more often than not, our Dao sect makes concessions, because the Yuan sect is stronger than us." Huanhuan's voice, though calm, carried a chill. "So during the sect competition, the Yuan sect specifically targets our disciples and even aims to kill them?" Lin Dong's eyes narrowed. "Yes." Huanhuan lowered her head, her dark hair veiling her face. She whispered, "The sect competition is a power struggle, and the Yuan sect disciples are stronger overall. Over the years, we've lost many senior brothers to them. The last sect competition, our Heaven Hall's former senior sister died at the hands of a Yuan sect disciple. She sacrificed herself to cover the retreat of the others. She had already declared surrender, but those animals still wouldn't let her go. They did it on purpose." Her voice trembled as she buried her face in her knees, her small frame shaking slightly. Lin Dong remained silent, knowing that in these power struggles between super sects, dirty tactics were commonplace. But he hadn't expected the Yuan sect to be so despicable. He stared at her frail form, his lips pressed together, a cold glint emerging in his dark eyes. For this sect competition, if nothing goes wrong, my sister will lead our team. I know her well. If it comes to it, she'll take down as many Yuan sect disciples as she can. Huanhuan lifted her head, wiping her face with her hand. Under the faint moonlight, her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She fixed her gaze on Lindong and said, "If that time comes, I won't hesitate either." Seeing the determination flash in her eyes, Lindong nodded silently. He hadn't been in the Dao sect for long, so he wasn't fully aware of the deep-seated hatred between the Dao sect and Yuan sect. But he was a Dao sect disciple now. If you're angry, then during this sect competition, just kill a few more Yuan sect disciples. Lindong smiled faintly, offering no words of comfort. Even he now harbored a deep resentment toward the Yuan sect. Huanhuan nodded firmly before breaking into a smile. But before that, we should focus on getting back to the Dao sect alive. Yao Ling won't let us off so easily. He probably has something that can track the fluctuations of the immortal essence ancient seed, Lindong remarked, glancing at the darkness outside. Then won't he go after Jiang Kuan and the others? Huanhuan's face grew worried. She knew Lindong had entrusted the immortal essence ancient seed to Yuan Fong and her group. Don't worry. When I handed the seed to Sister Fong, I sealed its energy fluctuations. Lindong grinned and then clenched his hand. In the next moment, the massive immortal essence ancient tree materialized, landing heavily on the ground. Besides, I have this. Yao Ling will mistake it for the immortal essence ancient seed. So he's bound to come after us. Only then did Huanhuan breathe a sigh of relief. She glanced at Lindong, surprised by his meticulous planning. Rest for now. You've exhausted yourself today. Yao Ling and his people likely won't find us tonight, Lindong reassured her. Huanhuan nodded slightly, feeling utterly exhausted. The lack of primordial energy within her left her body weak and drained. She leaned against the stone wall, slowly closing her eyes. Watching her rest, Lindong finally turned his head, peering through the fissure at the night sky. He could sense the ripples in the surrounding energy, a clear sign that Yao Ling and his men were scouring the mountain, searching for them. Yuan sect scum, you'll pay for this one day, Lindong muttered quietly. He then took out a black robe from his cosmic bag and gently draped it over the now sleeping Huanhuan. Only after ensuring she was comfortable did he sit down, his eyes remaining wide open. In this dangerous situation, he had no intention of resting. And so, Lindong kept watch all night, his senses on high alert. When the first rays of dawn tore through the sky, casting their light over the mountains, Huanhuan's long lashes trembled slightly before she opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Lindong sitting cross-legged in front of her, his eyes still bright and watchful. "Did you rest well?" Lindong asked, noticing her stir. She seemed much better than the night before. "You didn't rest?" Huanhuan, ever observant, noticed the slight weariness in Lindong's eyes. Clearly, he had spent the entire night guarding their position. Lindong glanced at her without a word, then stepped forward and retrieved the black robe. Huanhuan tilted her head slightly, watching him as she softly said, "Ever since you entered the Dao sect, I could tell you were always cautious. Isn't that exhausting?" "Exhausting?" Lindong chuckled, gazing at the girl before him. "You were born into a sect that countless people envy. But me, I come from a branch family of a low-level dynasty. When I was young, my family had an enemy who could wipe us out with just a flick of his finger. Even though I hated him to the core, I couldn't show it. I had to carefully hide my emotions and train hard until I had enough power to face him directly. Only then could I even begin to protect my family. I don't have any background or connections. So yes, I have to be cautious. Otherwise, how could someone from a low-level dynasty win the 100 Dynasty War?" Huanhuan fell silent, staring at the young man's face, which bore a faint smile. She could hardly imagine what he had gone through. "And that enemy of yours?" she asked softly. "I killed him on the peak of 100 Dynasties Mountain," Lindong shrugged, his voice calm. Huanhuan nodded lightly, unexpectedly quiet and respectful of his past. Suddenly, the mountain trembled violently. The boulders blocking the fissure collapsed, and from outside, the faint sounds of shouting and chaos could be heard. They had been found. Leave first. If you stay, you'll only hold me back, Lin Dong said, his eyes focused on the entrance, taking a deep breath. Huanhuan bit her lip, her eyes showing a hint of stubbornness. But as she stared at the figure in front of her, that stubbornness slowly melted away. In the end, she nodded lightly. All right. In the clear sky, over a dozen figures hovered, their violent primordial energy surging around them. Their eyes glinted with a sinister light as they stared at the fissure in the cliff. Lin Dong, still hiding after a whole night? Yao Ling, his hands behind his back, locked his cold gaze on the dark fissure. His voice, filled with suppressed anger and murderous intent, revealed the frustration from a night of fruitless searching. Your nose sure is sharp, like a beast's, came a light chuckle from within the fissure. Then, with a loud crash, the boulders shattered, sending debris flying as two figures shot out, landing atop the peak. It was Lin Dong and Huanhuan. Lin Dong's gaze quickly swept across the figures in midair. Their numbers had decreased since yesterday, but the group still posed a formidable threat. Apart from the most troublesome Yao Ling, there were also Su Lei from the Demon Seal Legion and Luo Yi, whom Lin Dong had fought the day before. The remaining individuals, judging by their aura, were all at the 7th Nirvana stage. 1 at the 9th Nirvana stage, 2 at the 8th Nirvana stage, and more than 7 at the 7th Nirvana stage. Even though Lin Dong had expected this, he couldn't help but tighten his fist inside his sleeve. Huanhuan stood behind Lin Dong, her gaze scanning the sky. A hint of worry flickered in her eyes. She knew Lin Dong's combat ability far exceeded what it appeared on the surface, but no matter how strong he was still only at the 5th Nirvana stage. It would be difficult enough to deal with Yao Ling, let alone Su Lei and Luo Yi, both of whom were notorious on the sect's wanted list. Kid, you won't escape this time. Yao Ling's sinister gaze locked onto Lin Dong as he sneered. Hand over the immortal essence ancient seed, and I might just let you two die together peacefully. Otherwise, today, I'll make sure you both beg for death. By the time he finished speaking, Yao Ling's face had twisted into a vicious snarl. The icy killing intent radiating from him caused the surrounding temperature to drop sharply. Lin Dong's expression remained calm. He turned slightly, glancing at the girl behind him, and said softly, "Go." Huanhuan bit her lip, hesitation flashing in her eyes. In this situation, leaving Lin Dong to fight alone would undoubtedly put him in grave danger. Maybe I can stay and help you. I've cultivated the formless Bodhi sound, so go. Before she could finish, Lin Dong cut her off, his voice flat and unwavering, devoid of any emotion. Looking at his lean figure in front of her, Huanhuan clenched her hands tightly. She could hear the faint trace of anger in his voice, something she had never seen from him before. For the first time since meeting him, she sensed a flicker of rage in this usually calm and cautious young man. "Be careful," she said quietly. After a deep breath, her complex gaze lingered on his back for a moment longer before she turned and dashed away without further hesitation. Trying to flee? Su Lei, stop her. Yao Ling's cold laugh echoed through the air as he shouted his command. Yes. Su Lei responded with a laugh, his foot stamping the ground as his body transformed into a streak of light, racing toward the fleeing Huanhuan. Swoosh. However, just as he charged forward, a shadowy figure appeared before him like a ghost. Lin Dong clenched his fist, and a massive, pitch-black ancient tree materialized in his hand. Grabbing it by the roots, he swung the tree with immense force, aiming it directly at Su Lei. Courting death. Su Lei was no easy opponent. Seeing Lin Dong blocking his path, he sneered coldly. With a swift motion of his hand, a silver thunder blade appeared, its edge crackling with lightning. He angled the blade and slashed heavily at the ancient black tree, producing a deafening sound like thunderclaps. Clang. As the two forces collided, the crisp sound of metal against wood reverberated through the air, accompanied by a shockwave that swept across the sky. When the thunder blade struck the black tree, Su Lei's expression suddenly changed, a look of shock crossing his face. He realized that the moment his blade touched the ancient tree, the flow of primordial energy within him had noticeably slowed down. There's something strange about this thing. Sulei's experience quickly told him that it was Lindong's odd black tree causing this. Without hesitation, he attempted to retreat. However, Lindong had no intention of giving him that chance. The current situation was incredibly disadvantageous for him, and he couldn't afford to waste any opportunities. As Sulei's primordial energy faltered for just a moment, Lindong's brow furrowed, and a gray light swiftly gathered at the center of his forehead. In an instant, the wild demon eye reappeared, firing a powerful gray beam directly towards Sulei's heart. The gray beam moved at lightning speed, and even Sulei, a seasoned fighter, broke out in a cold sweat. He immediately forced his primordial energy to surge within him, hastily forming a shield in front of him. Whoosh! The gray beam struck the shield with devastating force, revealing its terrifying destructive power. Cracks began to form on the seemingly sturdy shield, and with a loud bang, the beam pierced through it. Though the shield didn't fully stop the attack, it managed to slow the beam slightly. Seizing the moment, Sulei retreated, but his speed was no match for the gray beam. Just as he took 2 steps back, the beam struck his shoulder with the force of a bolt of lightning. Boom! The ferocious energy exploded upon impact, tearing through Sulei's shoulder with brutal force. He was thrown backward like a cannonball, blood spurting from his wound. Sulei staggered through the air, retreating more than a dozen steps before managing to stabilize himself. He clutched his bleeding shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers, and his face showed a mix of confusion and disbelief. How could he have been injured so severely in just one exchange with Lindong? "You little bastard, I'm going to kill you," Sulei roared, his eyes red with murderous intent. Whoosh! Before his words even finished, Lindong's figure had already flashed forward again, moving with ghost-like speed. His dark eyes radiated cold intent as he swung the black ancient tree like a giant club, smashing it towards Sulei without hesitation. Thud! The heavy impact echoed through the mountains as Sulei, just having regained his footing, was struck hard and sent flying once more. He crashed into the mountainside with such force that his body was embedded into the rock. "If you want to kill me, at least come prepared to leave something behind," Lindong said, a fierce smile tugging at his lips as he turned his gaze toward the dark-faced Yao Ling and the others. Yao Ling glanced at the struggling Sulei, who was trying to free himself from the mountainside. A trace of surprise flickered in his eyes. He was well aware of Sulei's strength, yet Lindong had injured him in a single exchange. Although it was unexpected, the ruthless nature of Lindong's methods was undeniable, something even seasoned killers like Yao Ling couldn't dismiss. "Your true strength is indeed far beyond what you show on the surface. But do you really think you can escape today?" Yao Ling said with a faint smile. As he took a step forward, an overwhelming wave of power began to radiate from his body. Under the pressure of that power, Lindong's breathing momentarily faltered. His expression grew serious. This was the strength of the 9th Nirvana stage, a power far beyond his current capabilities. "No matter how much you struggle in front of me, the outcome will be the same," Yao Ling said calmly, lifting his hand and making a subtle grasping motion toward Lindong. "You won't escape from my grasp. Boss, once we capture this kid, let me have a little fun with him. I'll crush every bone in his body, one by one." Sulei growled as he staggered out of the mountainside, blood still dripping from his wounds. He was clearly in bad shape, but his eyes burned with hatred as he stared at Lindong. "Once we have the immortal essence ancient seed, he's all yours," Yao Ling replied with a faint smile as he cracked his neck and took another step forward, clearly ready to personally deal with Lindong. Lindong's eyes narrowed as he watched Yao Ling approach. He took a deep breath, his gaze hardening as a fierce glint flashed through his eyes. Then, he reached into his cosmic bag and pulled out 5 crimson immortal essence ancient fruits. "I've walked the line between life and death more times than I can count. You don't know what I'm capable of," Lindong muttered, his lips curling into a twisted grin. In the next moment, before Yao Ling and the others' eyes, He popped all 5 immortal essence ancient fruits into his mouth and swallowed them whole. Gulp. The sound of Lin Dong swallowing the fruits echoed in the tense air. Yao Ling's eyes widened slightly, though instead of shock, a look of pity crossed his face. He shook his head and said, "You fool! You clearly don't know what you've just done. Do you have any idea how violent the energy in a single immortal essence ancient fruit is? Even I wouldn't dare eat 5 at once. You've sealed your own fate." Yao Ling sneered at Lin Dong, amused by his reckless actions. He and the others watched in anticipation, expecting Lin Dong to be torn apart by the uncontrollable energy. Really? But instead of panic, Lin Dong slowly raised his head, his eyes now glowing with a faint green light. A mocking smile played on his lips. "The energy is violent, sure. But if you think it's enough to kill me, you're mistaken. It seems I'll be disappointing you." Lin Dong pressed his hands together, his fingers forming complex seals at a dizzying speed. A low chant escaped his lips. Buzz. The moment his voice fell, an immense and terrifying surge of energy erupted from his body. The force of the energy was so overwhelming that Lin Dong's skin began to flush red from the pressure. "I'll enjoy watching you die." Yao Ling sneered coldly, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Suppress." As Lin Dong's hand seals shifted with lightning speed, a low, thunderous voice echoed from within his body. The sound reverberated like rolling thunder, and soon after, the ancient cosmic formation suspended above his dantian began to tremble. Threads of light emanated from the formation, spreading like a massive web that quickly enveloped the raging crimson energy coursing through Lin Dong's body. Bang! Bang! The surging energy clashed violently against the web, but the net held firm, binding the energy tightly and preventing it from rampaging out of control. "Calm down." A warm light surged forth, transforming into a stone talisman that hovered above the immense energy. As radiant beams cascaded down, the violent nature of the energy was quickly cleansed. "Devour!" Another deep voice resounded, and an ancient, dark symbol appeared, unleashing an overwhelming devouring force like a black hole. Hiss! The torrential crimson energy began to flood into the black hole. Once the violent properties were devoured, the remaining pure energy coursed through Lin Dong's meridians, flowing with immense power. With the ancient cosmic formation, the mysterious stone talisman, and the devouring ancestral talisman, Lin Dong had nearly perfectly suppressed the tremendous energy from the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits. Of course, suppression didn't mean complete absorption. Lin Dong didn't have the time to fully refine that power right now. What he sought was not a boost in strength through cultivation, but rather a temporary surge of explosive power. During this brief period of heightened power, he could rival the likes of Yao Ling. However, such a rapid burst of energy could easily push his physical body to its limits. If his body couldn't withstand the massive force, it would likely burst apart like an overinflated balloon. The potent energy raged like a flood through Lin Dong's limbs, and a sharp pain spread through his meridians from the pressure. Sky-transforming dragon art. Sensing the turbulence within his body, Lin Dong took a deep breath and shifted his hand seals once again. In the depths of his eyes, a brilliant azure light suddenly flared up. The azure light spread throughout Lin Dong's body, and as it passed through his meridians, tiny azure scales appeared on the inner walls of his veins. These scales acted like a protective barrier, shielding his meridians from the overwhelming force. With their appearance, the sensation of his meridians tearing subsided significantly. Creak! Lin Dong clenched his fists, feeling an unprecedented surge of power coursing through his body. A wild grin spread across his face. With the help of the 3 divine artifacts in his body, along with the powerful sky-transforming dragon art, he had successfully gained control over the terrifying energy from the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits. Though this control was temporary, during this brief window, Lin Dong possessed incredible strength. "Gentlemen, are you ready?" Lin Dong raised his head, his azure-lit eyes fixed on Yao Ling and the others. A fierce smile tugged at his lips. "That bastard!" Yao Ling and his men watched in disbelief as the energy around Lin Dong suddenly skyrocketed. Their expressions darkened. They could hardly believe that Lin Dong had managed to suppress the energy from the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits. Yao Ling's gaze grew colder, and a hint of apprehension crept into his heart. Lin Dong's extraordinary feats were unsettling. If allowed to grow unchecked, he could become a serious threat in the future. Looking at Lin Dong's youthful, yet ferociously determined face, Yao Ling couldn't help but recall another disciple from the Dao sect, someone who had once single-handedly stormed the Yuan sect and slain 3 of their elders. We can't let him live. The thought sent a chill through Yao Ling, and his eyes blazed with murderous intent. In a flash, he vanished, leaving behind a faint trail of energy. Lin Dong stood in midair, the gray light flickering from the wild demon eye at his brow. As he watched Yao Ling disappear, a twisted smile tugged at his lips. His arms surged with azure light, shifting and morphing into 2 massive, sinister dragon arms. The powerful energy surged through them as he tightened his grip on the immortal essence ancient tree. In the next moment, Lin Dong took a single step forward and swung the massive tree, slamming it toward a spot in front of him. Screech! The tree tore through the air, producing a sharp, piercing sound as the force behind it became almost tangible. Boom! At the exact spot where the tree struck, a fist encased in radiant golden light pierced through space, colliding with the tree head-on. The impact produced a deafening boom, and the shockwaves from their clash spread like a violent storm, shattering nearby mountain peaks and sending boulders tumbling down. Thud! Both figures were forced back from the collision, retreating from the epicenter of the blast. They were evenly matched. Using the power of the 5 immortal essence ancient fruits, Lin Dong had momentarily gained enough strength to stand toe-to-toe with Yao Ling. Not bad for someone at the 9th Nirvana stage, Lin Dong said with a grin, steadying himself. Only after clashing with Yao Ling head-on did he realize the overwhelming power of a 9th Nirvana stage expert. Without the energy from the fruits, he wouldn't have stood a chance. It's too early to celebrate, kid. I'll show you the true power of the 9th Nirvana stage. Yao Ling's cold voice rang out as he gathered his primordial energy, forming a golden spear in his hand. The weapon emitted waves of terrifying energy. Shoo! Yao Ling shot forward like a bolt of lightning, the spear in his hand transforming into countless phantoms that rained down on Lin Dong like a torrential storm. Whoosh! Before the spear shadows could strike, Lin Dong's figure vanished from sight. Ah! A scream echoed from behind Yao Ling. He turned quickly to see one of the 7th Nirvana stage members of the Demon Seal Legion being struck by Lin Dong's immortal essence ancient tree. The blow was so powerful it shattered the man's arms into a bloody pulp. Whoosh! Lin Dong, after taking down one opponent, flashed a sinister grin at Yao Ling and then dashed toward another 7th Nirvana stage fighter. Lin Dong wasn't planning on directly engaging Yao Ling at the start. With his current power, he could easily take down the 7th Nirvana stage warriors. His goal was to clear the battlefield, to slaughter these men so thoroughly that their souls would be scattered to the winds. Another 7th Nirvana stage expert saw Lin Dong charging toward him, and fear flickered in his eyes. Yet, instead of retreating, he gritted his teeth and roared, gripping his large blade tightly. A fierce blade aura slashed toward Lin Dong with all his might. Bang! The black ancient tree swung through the air, shattering the blade aura instantly. The tree's massive shadow followed, crashing down on the expert's head with devastating force. His skull exploded on impact, blood sprang across the sky. Blood rained down from the heavens as Luo, Su Lei, and the others stared in shock at the youth drenched in the crimson rain. For the first time, even they felt a chill of fear crawling up their spines. You little bastard, I'll tear you to pieces today. Yao Ling's eyes turned blood-red as he watched Lin Dong swiftly dispatch 2 of his subordinates. His furious roar, brimming with killing intent, echoed across the sky. This ruthless figure, ranked 4th on the sect's wanted list, had finally been driven to the brink of madness by Lin Dong. An overwhelming wave of primordial energy surged from Yao Ling's body, enveloping the surrounding space. His eyes were ferocious as they locked onto Lin Dong's figure. With a sudden jolt of his spear, a deafening hum reverberated as a massive spear light, spanning dozens of meters, tore through the air like lightning, heading straight for Lin Dong. The speed of the spear light was incredible, and in an instant, it blocked all of Lin Dong's escape routes. He had no choice but to abandon his plan of attacking the weaker members of the Demon Seal Legion. With a swift turn, he swung the black tree, releasing a surge of power so immense that even the air seemed to explode under its pressure. Boom! The two forces collided with a thunderous crash, the shockwave rippling through the air like a violent storm. Lin Dong's body shuddered as he was forced to retreat dozens of steps. The black tree twirled in his hand as he stabilized himself, his expression grave. Despite the temporary power boost from the 5 Immortal Essence Ancient Fruits, there was still a considerable gap between his strength and Yao Ling's. Su Lei, Luo Yi, attack with me. Kill this brat. The rest of you, surround the area and make sure no one escapes. Yao Ling ordered coldly, his gaze flickering over Lin Dong. After his initial burst of rage, Yao Ling had calmed down. He realized that Lin Dong's strength had increased dramatically, making him far too dangerous for the weaker 7th Nirvana stage fighters to handle. It was better to withdraw them and take care of Lin Dong himself, along with the help of Su Lei and Luo Yi, both at the 8th Nirvana stage. Understood. Luo Yi and Su Lei nodded, their eyes gleaming with malice as they focused on Lin Dong. However, beneath that malice was a hint of fear. Lin Dong's ruthless display of crushing 2 7th Nirvana stage fighters had unsettled even them. Powerful waves of primordial energy began to emanate from Luo Yi and Su Lei. They moved in unison with Yao Ling, forming a triangular formation that surrounded Lin Dong, sealing off all his escape routes. Attack! Yao Ling's deep voice rang out as he launched forward, his spear ripping through space. The wild energy swirling around the spear was powerful enough to tear through the Nirvana gold bodies of even the strongest 8th Nirvana stage experts. The spear thrust toward Lin Dong's vital points with deadly precision. As Yao Ling made his move, Luo Yi and Su Lei also attacked, sending powerful waves of energy through the sky, enveloping Lin Dong in a suffocating killing intent. Lin Dong's eyes flickered. The immense pressure surrounding him made his expression even more solemn. Facing a 9th Nirvana stage expert and 2 8th Nirvana stage experts attacking in unison, even the slightest mistake would mean certain death. Wild Demon Eye. A gray line rapidly condensed at Lin Dong's brow, transforming into a demonic eye. The moment it appeared, a terrifying gray beam shot out, colliding with the attacks of Yao Ling and the others head-on. Boom, boom, boom. Violent energy rippled out as the attacks clashed. However, Lin Dong was outnumbered 3-1. And the destructive power of the wild demon eye was dispersed across the attacks, significantly reducing its effectiveness. Whoosh! Lin Dong hadn't expected to rely on the wild demon eye alone to block Yao Ling's group. As soon as the gray beam shot out, his figure retreated rapidly, and in a flash, he appeared right in front of Su Lei. Among the three, Yao Ling was the strongest, while Luo Yi and Su Lei were evenly matched. However, Su Lei had been injured earlier and was clearly weaker now, making him the easiest target. Humph! Su Lei wasn't an idiot. The moment he saw Lin Dong's movement, he knew the latter intended to break the formation through him. Snorting coldly, he gathered his primordial energy in his palms, channeling a violent force. Shattering primordial palm. With a furious roar, Su Lei unleashed a powerful palm strike toward Lin Dong. The air vibrated with the sound of thunder as the force of the strike tore through the atmosphere. Yet, Lin Dong didn't dodge or evade. Instead, azure light erupted from his body, quickly forming scales across his skin. The dragon scales shimmered as they covered his body. Without hesitation, Lin Dong took a step forward, ramming his body directly into Su Lei's incoming attack. Boom, boom. As azure light rippled around him, a dragon's shadow seemed to follow Lin Dong's movements. His charge carried the force to shatter mountains. Azure Dragon Charge. Su Lei's pupils contracted as Lin Dong's low voice reached his ears. In the next instant, his fierce palm strike collided directly with Lin Dong's body, which was covered in the dense dragon scales. Boom. Upon contact, a visible shockwave of energy rippled outward, distorting the space around them with its sheer force. Su Lei's face changed drastically the moment his palm landed on Lin Dong's dragon-scaled body. Only then did he realize how terrifying the power hidden beneath those azure scales truly was. In an instant, the force of Su Lei's palm strike was completely dissolved by Lin Dong's dragon-scaled defense. Su Lei's expression darkened as his attack crumbled into nothingness. With Su Lei's attack neutralized, Lin Dong's full force charge slammed into him without mercy. Blood sprayed from Su Lei's mouth as his body was sent flying backward in a disheveled mess. Though Lin Dong had wounded Su Lei again, there was no time for celebration. He could already sense that, in the split second he had attacked Su Lei, Yao Ling and Luoyi had closed in, their combined assault aimed at his vulnerable back. Clearly, they had been waiting for Lin Dong to make a move, hoping to exploit the opening that would inevitably appear during his offense. If Lin Dong couldn't find a way to defend against this attack, he would be finished. "Kid, this is the end for you." Lin Dong glanced over his shoulder and saw the ferocious expressions of Yao Ling and Luo Yi as their relentless attacks closed in. Huff! A deep breath escaped Lin Dong's mouth as he looked at the retreating, weakened Su Lei. It was the perfect moment to finish him off. Lin Dong's eyes flickered rapidly, and in the next moment, brilliant azure light erupted from within his body. The light quickly coalesced around him, forming a massive azure bell with the image of a dragon etched upon its surface. Immovable azure dragon bell. At Lin Dong's command, the azure bell formed in a flash, just as the ferocious attacks from Yao Ling and Luo Yi arrived. Clang! Clang! A sharp, piercing sound rang out the moment their strikes hit the bell, followed by a torrent of murderous, violent energy. Boom! Cracks spread rapidly across the azure bell, and with a deafening crash, it shattered completely. Countless fragments of azure light scattered, and a powerful force exploded outward in all directions. Lin Dong used the momentum of the blast to propel himself forward, his figure vanishing in a flash. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the pale-faced Su Lei, much to the shock and fury of Yao Ling and Luo Yi. "It's over." Lin Dong's cold gaze locked onto Su Lei, a faint, indifferent smile tugging at his lips. "You think you can kill me?" Despite his weakened state, Su Lei wasn't easy prey. He knew that if he could stall Lin Dong for even a moment, Yao Ling and Luo Yi's combined attacks would strike Lin Dong down. With that thought, he frantically channeled his primordial energy, causing brilliant golden light to explode from his body as he pushed his nirvana golden body to its absolute limit. With this defense in place, even Lin Dong shouldn't be able to kill him in one strike. At least, that was what Su Lei believed. However, as he prepared for the incoming attack, he noticed a mocking glint in Lin Dong's eyes. The next instant, Lin Dong extended his hand toward him, and a small, golden wheel, no larger than a palm, silently appeared. The moment the golden wheel materialized, Su Lei's pupils contracted sharply. A sudden, chilling sense of death swept over him. "No!" A hoarse scream began to escape from Su Lei's throat, but it was cut off abruptly. A flash of golden light streaked from Lin Dong's palm, moving so fast it was nearly invisible. It passed cleanly through Su Lei's throat, leaving behind a thin trail of crimson blood.